George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. We're so pleased to be joined by an old friend of the Q's, J.D. Davis, the author of Command and Chivalry, Leadership Lessons from the Battlefield to the Boardroom. And he should know a little bit about that. He is retired military, spent some time in the Q's for a minute, and now here he is back to tell us a little bit about his story. Lots going on in the world. We'll touch on that as well. But let me begin by first, and also most importantly, you see that purple he got on? Proud member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So don't get it twisted. Ha! Roo! You know what I'm saying? Listen, JD, good to see you again. And when did you live in the Q's, by the way?
I lived in the Q's from 2001 into 2002. My
Oh,
my youngest son was born there at Krause Hospital, one of the
you
greatest places we live. We love Central New York.
you made such an impression here that I thought you were here way longer than that.
It seemed like it was much longer than that. I met so many great people like yourself that it seemed like I was there much longer than that, but it was about 18 months.
Isn't that something? Well, so good. So tell me a little bit about you. For those meeting you for the first time, I know you and your lovely wife Sherry. Tell us, and both of you were military at the time. I should add. Tell us a little bit about your background and how did your. Well, first let's talk about your background. How'd you end up in the military?
Well, first, George, thank you for having me here. It's been following you over the years and watching how you evolve. So it's an honor for me to be with you here today. So thank you for having me. And I served an extensive career in the military, serving both the United States and abroad, and during times of peace and during conflict. And so my specialty in the military is that I started out as a combat soldier, what we
Mm,
call infantry,
hmm
and I transitioned later into was a military police. And so I've served in many different staff and command assignments around the world, even had a chance to work with NATO. And so shortly after leaving the CUSE in 2002, the next year in 2003, I was in Boardroom, Afghanistan. And
mm.
so I had some experience over there and retired and continued in education and continued to lead where I just honed my skills as a leader. And what I spend my time now just encouraging, coaching, and mentoring leaders into getting insights into understanding and getting clarity about their purpose and their position.
How did your military experience, JD, shape the leader that you are today?
Yes, a good question. That was significantly. When I first joined, I had leaders who poured into me, and before I could recognize the gift that I've had, leaders recognized it in me.
Mm,
They recognized it in me, and I kept thinking that I was just lucky that I had favor that folks would put me in position. I'd find myself in a leadership position over my peers at a very early age, getting favored in assignments because they had confidence in me as a leader. And so as I went to college, after my first enlistment, I continued to find myself in the different leadership roles. And again, people naturally were attracted to me, finding myself getting high peer evaluations, leadership awards, and all of these things. I kept saying to myself, George, that, hey, I'm just lucky, just falling all in. It was many years into the military that I look back and I saw some of the things of how my leaders cared about me, showed compassion for me, and mentored me and coached me, and wouldn't let the basic things slip that led me to be someone who knew the number one thing about leadership is people and our relationship with people. And that relationship with people is what gives us the ability to influence people. And so, we want to be a good a leader. We got to be have good relationships to be able to influence.
in fact, your leadership mantra is EQ. Explain what that is.
Right. EQ leadership is something that I have developed that I believe that will enable leaders to be able to perform more effectively by using those three excuse me, empower, engage, and execute. You know, In mathematical, three is to the third power. So the third power, we want to empower others, we want to engage them, and then we're going to execute. Sounds like a very simple concept, but I do go into a little more in depth in the book. But empowering goes much further than just delegating authority, but it's actually equipping individuals with the tools to carry out. And that equipment may include some coaching that you have to do. It's going to require patience. It's going to mean you have to step back and accept things at a lower standard until those individuals hone those skills. But you're going to empower them and equip them and be there and partner with them until they get you. And engaging is getting from behind your desk and meeting people where they are. You're asking individuals to perform a function. And if you ask them to do something you're not willing to do yourself, then you got to take a step back and think about it. You don't have to be the master of it yourself, but meeting people where they are, engaging them, know their names. Nothing worse than a boss comes in and says, "Who's that guy over there?" Right? I've been here 5 years. You don't know who I am, but learn who they are because see, when we learn who people are, that relationship piece, we can now realize what their strengths are, and we can now value those strengths and use that and maximize that to greater effectiveness for the organization. And we take those to empower, engage, and it's going to build up to an execute. And execute is a very powerful. A lot of times we want all the stars to line up before we get it right, but execution is taking that time, looking at the risk, and seeing what those risks are and seeing what we need to do and then moving out, taking that forward. It may be short of everything we need, but executing.
And get Katie Davis focus command and leadership lessons from the both to the room. Let me say this time that I wanted to follow up that you mentioned. My first thing you talked about the willingness to accept a lower standard until you get what you want. And I think I'll claim for myself guilty of expecting it to be great initially, right? And or expecting it to be great initially and forgetting the piece is the second part of it, that leadership is development. And so as part of that development, when you say accept a lower standard, that's hard for a lot of us. Okay, so that's part one. And then part two is because you're in the military and because there isn't any wiggle room, you're almost, you have to do it the way it's expected to be done. So given that, that's how I perceive it, right? Whereas in the boardroom, there's a lot that you're trying to bring people up to a certain standard. In the military, there's no wiggle room. This is the standard. And so put all of that together for me, right? The development and accepting a lower standard at first, but in the military, there isn't any low, right. There is a standard, period.
Right. So absolutely. And you're right on target. And I knew you'd catch on to that, which is very good. And so one of the things, and to your point, in the military that's unique about us is that we work with the hand that we're dealt, right? So we may not have like the NFL recruiting the highest caliber of players on our team, but we do have players who are trained to be able to perform at that minimum standard, right?
Right.
Our goal is to get them performing at a higher standard. We won't get there until we allow them, till we empower them, get in the tools to execute something, and then come back and coach them through how they can improve. And eventually they're going to get to achieve the standard that we want. But we're going to have to accept that the individuals who are working for us are not our clones. They're not our clones. They're not us. Like our kids, right? We go through that as parents. We look at our kids, we expect them to, hey, I was good at math. What's the problem here? Oh, I was good at football. What's going on here, right? We look at that gift that we have and we look at others and say, okay, oh, well, you fall a little short there. It's easy to do myself, right? Want something, do it right, do it yourself. Well, what a philosophy. But from the leadership perspective, we want something done right, not only now, but we want to we got to empower them to be able to do something to a higher standard, but we got to accept something lower. In other words, it's still done right. It's still done to the satisfactory performance, but we need to go, like Jim Collins said, from good to great, right? We can't get them there unless we allow them to go through it. It's sort of that whole dynamic of allowing individuals to fail so you can call them back in and say, what can we do to improve? And it doesn't happen long before the light bulb comes on and we start to see the performance increase immensely.
Well, what is that? When do you start to see that? Because that means that you have to invest, right? It doesn't just happen because you expect it to happen. There is an investment that you have to make in order for that change to occur. The other piece I will say is that in the military, you can't afford to have a lengthy time. In other words, that transition from accepting a lower standard to raising the standard has to be quick because there are consequences.
Oh,
okay.
yes.
And so translate that to the boardroom because
Yes.
it's a difference.
All right. So I want
I'm
you to
all up in your
understand
stuff,
that in
right?
the military, one of the things that we do, and that is unique about us, is we get some practice before we go into a combat situation, and that is the place where we allow that standard to be low. That is where we realize how we need to empower folks to get them up to a standard to where we can take them into a real life scenario. In the boardroom, in the boardroom, we are looking at a new executive director for a position, and we look at the new executive director, we expect him to hit it from day one, performing the same way as the former executive director performed. We slap everything on them right away, and we have expectations for them. And that individual is coming off, and but unfortunately, they don't know what they don't know. It's going to be a few months learning curve before they're going to be at a point that we're going to be able to ask questions, and they're going to have the answers for us. But starting out, that executive director has a learning curve because even if individual was there before, there are relationships that need to be built at that level.
Mm-hmm.
There are some uh, uh, partners that needs to be considered and brought in and things of that nature, but it won't happen right away. So they're going to need an assist. They're going to need some latitude in. They're going to need a little more in terms of the board into directing how and what's important in the area of priorities. If the board doesn't express and say what the priorities are, then the executive director is going to get in and immediately think these are priorities. And then all of a sudden the board is saying, well, the old executive director did. So let's take that back to we're going to empower this executive director to do what needs to be done on his team and train them. But we got to engage him with a clear purpose, engage him to establish the values of the core values of the organization. Hopefully, they have established some, and engage him with what the vision is, or charge him with finding a vision for the organization. And then send them out to actually execute these things.
Well, and so let's go back to the title of the book, Command. We're clear about that, but the chivalry part is
Oh,
right. So
yeah.
that's those. What does that mean to you personally, and how does command and chivalry frame your approach to leadership? Now, here's what I think chivalry is. It's like, oh, now respect, right? That's what I think of when I think of chivalry, or um taking care of, right? Or looking out for one another, or selflessness. Those are the things that I think of. You tell me if I'm anywhere close.
You're right there on it, George. And it's just that. We understand command. We look at our military officers and we're in leadership position. One thing we have to understand is command. We're in charge and we are in charge and the buck stop with us. We are responsible for everything that happens in that organization and everything that fails to happen in the organization. I'm gonna give you a good example of that. That when I was a company commander, I took command on a Friday, and on Monday morning, I was in the battalion commander's office, and he says, "I need you to explain to me why you had a soldier get a DUI this weekend."
Mm.
So I own it. I didn't get a DUI, my soldier did. But that's a concept that we do in the military. We are accountable for everything that happens and fails to happen. And as commanders, we understand that very well. And so often when we think about us as commanders, you think about our ability to direct and our ability to not only be in charge, but to do it in a commanding way. I talk, you listen, right? Those things. But we gotta be able to lead, and this all ties in leadership very chivalrously, where we can do just what you talked about. We think about how we lift people up and give them more fuel, feel valued about doing what they do so they can do it and they want to desire to do it. They want to keep doing it better. So it goes back to what you're talking about. It's showing that respect, that courtesy. It's treating people with dignity. And when you do that, they want to be a part of the organization. They want to follow you. Because when it comes to leadership, what it really boils down to, what leadership is all about, is our ability to creates a culture that people want to follow us. They don't want to leave because they want to be with us. They want to be there. And why they want to be with us? It's because of how we treat them. Um, And I want to backtrack just a little bit because there's one thing that you mentioned earlier when you had talked about us, the military in particular, in comparison with the boardroom and the leadership, and how I mentioned that when we empower, we're gonna have to basically empower them, and then we may
Hmm.
not accept the full standard until they get it.
Hmm.
And we do that in our training so we can get there. So, because when we go into an environment that's totally different, when we execute what we're doing and go into combat, we have this mantra that we say, the enemy only has to get it right once. We got to get it right every time. So, we are empowering, engaging to execute a standard, to execute a higher standard, a standard that we know we got to get right every time. The enemy only has to get it right once, but we got to get it right every time.
You know, JD, one of the things you talk about, so there's a lot of things. Let's talk about where you um, situate yourself. One of the things you write about is emotional intelligence, right? Now, we think about that in terms of relationships, but you're talking about emotional intelligence in terms of leadership style and execution. Can you explain a situation where that came in to play in your own leadership style?
Oh, yes. And I'll tell you, it has quite a bit. It has quite a bit. I've had individuals who have worked for me, um, individuals who work for me, who were put in a situation where they had to go and make a request um, for items that was outside the tolerance of outside the suspense. And so they would have to go and do that. And they would come to me and say, "Sir, we should have this type of timeline and do this. However, I am going to talk with such and such and this person to get this through because I know how important it is to you." That reason that became that way is because with emotional intelligence, it's about recognizing our emotion and others' emotion. And so, and right in the middle of all of it is this thing called empathy. Empathy is being able to not only see, but feel what others feel. And when you show that compassion to others, they're going to want to follow you in any type of situation. I've had it where we've had, and I'll give you a combat example of emotional intelligence as well. Well, we've had requests for and demands for assets that we don't have capability of having. But when that request came in, we knew we could not do it. But when we engage indirectly, and individuals are able to relate and see what we're really talking about, and and to understand the position, they were able to understand, and we're able to work something out. But it's really when we look at emotional intelligence, one of the first things I think about, and leaders, it's a powerful tool for leaders, is our awareness of ourselves, that tone we use. How are we talking down to people? Because that can turn people off. Are we building people up? So how we talk, be self-aware of that. Also be aware of our triggers when folks talk to us and not allow those to get to us. We hear folks talk to us a certain
But,
way.
but let me cut in for a minute, right?
Yep.
Because I don't associate the military style as being emotionally intelligent. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
what I perceive is the breaking down and in your face
Hmm.
and emotional intelligence be damned. We ain't got time for that because our lives are on the line, soldier.
Mm. Very good. And that's what most will believe and see. But as a leader, we got a duty. We need to understand that when we about to that convoy is about to go outside of the wire, that convoy is going to go outside the wire. What emotions are our soldiers feeling in that time? So not only aware of our emotions, but how are they feeling at the time? What are they going through and how are they feeling? And we need, as a leader, need to understand that because there's some anxiety, there's some fear, and all of those things. So how do we help as a leader? Recognizing those emotions, and then that art of leadership empowers us with the words to reassure our forces before they step out that they're working for the best army in the world, and they have been trained to the highest standard because we've empowered them through those mistakes to get them to level proficiency are to give them back that confidence. So now, being aware of that, now we can focus on what we can do to give them that self assurance they need.
What do
Being
you
aware of what just happened back at home makes us empathetic to that situation that they're going through. Again, the art of leadership. Now we can approach that the right way. The right way being the appropriate way at that time that's needed to get and ensure that soldiers engage in that mission so that they're alert and that they keep everybody alive by being alert.
The name of the book is called Command and Chivalry: Leadership Lessons from the Boardroom to from Leadership Lessons from the Battlefield from the Boardroom. JD Davis is a former military officer turned coach and trainer with an extensive experience in high stakes decision making. Get the book. JD, how do people get the book?
Great. So you can get the book on Amazon and type in Command and Chivalry. It should pop up first. And you can purchase it right there on Amazon, either ebook, soft copy, or hard copy. And make sure when you do get the book and you read it, go back and give me a review. I'm also hopefully be coming through your way, George, in August. So I'll let you know, and I'll stop in and see you as well.
Let's
Uh,
go.
but um, it offered on a few other smaller platforms too, like Google Play and a few others. But Amazon's the primary way of getting it, and I highly encourage you to get it. It is a piece of work that I've enjoyed doing over the past couple of years. I do bring in some stories, some real life things that have occurred in my life, as well as some things that I've seen. But mostly what I captured there is my leadership philosophy that has made me successful. That's kind of transitioned, morphed over time using my gift that I've been blessed with, and that's the ability to lead and influence others.
To empower, to engage. No, empower.
Yes.
What's the second one?
Right. So empower, engage, and
Oh,
execute
that's what I
is
thought. Okay, I got
EQ.
it. Yeah,
Right.
empower age
Empower, engage, and execute.
EQ. Let's
So,
go.
so, so yes, absolutely, absolutely.
JD Davis, thank you. Again, the book is called Command and Chivalry, Leadership Lessons from the Battlefield to the Boardroom. I call him JD. I forgot he does have a first name. It's
I do go.
James.
Yeah, I use my government name there, but
I don't know.
JD.
I just write with the JD. That's how I know him.
They with the JD. I love that better.
JD Davis, thank you so much.
Yes,
George
yes,
Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation. Oh, one more thing. I got last question. I meant to
yes.
ask you about. We're now in a military exercise, if you will, in real life in Iran. Your thoughts about that?
Oh, great. Well, we are in a very, very uncharted water right now. As Americans, we generally advocate for peace, and any use of force is usually as a last resort after we cannot come to a consensus on peace. And so when we did launch our attack, of course, it was inevitable to see a retaliation of some sort. The big risk that we have is that we have U.S. service members assigned all around the world, and they can be vulnerable to not only attacks from Iranian forces, but other forces that may partner with them. And so we have to be very vigilant right now into ensuring the safety of our troops abroad who may be in harm's way from some retaliation for what had happened. Hopefully, we'll come back to the table and do what we do best, which is diplomacy and peace talks. And because we at a last resort is to launch the offensive attack when we don't have a threat to U.S. forces.
All right, a lot of conversation about was there enough
Yes.
knowledge? Should the I'll leave you with this.
Hmm.
Democrats, for example, in Congress asking for, well, you didn't ask us for permission. Have they seen this president in action? He's never asking you for anything. So it's just kind of interesting that I know what the Constitution says, but you already know that this person has no regard for what the Constitution says. It's what I want to do right now in this moment. So it's just interesting how the opposition party, if you will, is seeing itself just talking about, well, you didn't ask permission. Well, they already stole the car. So
Absolutely. And what we find is since we haven't launched a war with Iran, there's a lot of latitude for the president to use those forces if they even in an offensive nature as he did without the approval of Congress. It is a courtesy to bring the Congress in on something of this nature, but because we're not launching a war itself, they don't have to get the approval of Congress to take the offensive.
as it is defined constitutionally. There
That's
you
correct.
go. All right, JD Davis, get the book Command and Chivalry, Amazon and where books are sold. Thanks so much, JD.
Thank you for having me, George.
Inspiration for the nation.